morning, Player Profiler. I am not Jason Allwine. I am the Podfather. I am here at 10 a.m. to talk fantasy football, talk NFL. What is currently interesting with fantasy draft season upon us, best ball season in full swing, best ball mania season at Underdog in full swing. It's fantasy time. I thought this would be a great day to come on Wake and Take because it's fantasy. This is it. Once we get to the second half of July, fantasy drafts are starting. Traditional, family style, friends, colleagues getting together, having a fantasy draft. This is why we do this. I mean, the NFL draft is great. The Super Bowl is great. There's all these things that happen during the season that are super interesting, super fun. So many of these games are great, but it's this season. This is what we live for. Fantasy season, baby. This is fantasy season. I talked to Ryan Reynolds earlier this week on the Mind of Mansion show, and he was the first person to surface this potential concern, which I share. This concern with the Cowboys, that the production that Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb posted last year was unsustainable, that they were going against a bunch of injury-ravaged secondaries and defenses, and that this year the defenses are improved. The Giants' defense is improved. We know that. And they're going to be going against some stifling defenses, truly smothering secondaries in the AFC North. And what Ryan Reynolds said to me shook me a little bit. It did, because I just drafted CeeDee Lamb in the Scott Fish Bowl. And of course, we are going to be checking out my Scott Fish Bowl team. I was talking to Rich Goldstein, who helps us here with quality assurance and testing. He's a great guy. And we were on a web meeting. I shared my screen and showed him my Scott Fish Bowl. And he's like, is that what the Scott Fish Bowl looks like? And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, that's so interesting. That's an interesting platform. What is that? See, he had never seen my fantasy league. So I'll show you right now. This is what my fantasy looked like. This is it. This is my fantasy league. And so he threw him a little bit. He was like, I'm used to Sleeper or ESPN or Yahoo or whatever it is. And he was like, this is different. And I was like, it works fine. Works fine. So the Scott Fish Bowl has their leagues split between my fantasy league and Sleeper. And as you can see here, I drafted CeeDee Lamb in the first round and then went back with Justin Jefferson in the second round. We've talked about this in a bunch of shows. But if you're going to be in a super flex, tight end, super premium format, very deep, you can start 5, 6 receivers. Well, you've got to figure out where you're okay being weak. And I decided that I feel like my edge, especially this year, and this is also, I think, your edge. Okay? This is also your edge. That it's running back. Like, this is where we have the biggest edge. We talk about these second-year running backs that are undervalued, from Zamir White, Zach Charbonnet. I like them all. I didn't like Zach Charbonnet last year, but his ADP was crazy. I like him this year. He's a much better value this year. Roshan Johnson, Kendre Miller, Evan Hull. We know the list. We know the list of all these second-year running backs that have potential, and that's my best edge. Right? My best edge in traditional leagues is to figure out which running backs have true league-winning upside in the double-digit rounds. And if that's my edge, then that needs to be the place that I opt to be weak. Especially if I'm starting my lineup, submitting my lineup every week, I can't afford to have these decisions between, is it going to be Khalil Shakir or is it going to be Elijah Moore? Like, I don't know. I mean, Khalil Shakir could greatly outproduce Elijah Moore, and then the week I'm making the decision, that's the week Elijah Moore goes nuclear because they're playing the Cowboys. I don't want to be in that position, man. And when you draft CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson in the first 2 rounds of a Superflex league, then you don't have to be in that position, man. And as you all know, my third pick, I'm all in now on Dalton Kincaid. He's my tight end 1. I think that he has the clearest path to being the most productive tight end in all of fantasy football. He doesn't have Amon-Ra St. Brown standing in his way. It's that simple. He's a similar player to Sam Laporta, and yet he doesn't have the same kind of target competition. And now we're seeing, if we flip over to Keon Coleman and we look at the underdog ADP, we see, oh, wow, he's just in the last week, he's lost 8 slots in his ADP. It's like, what's happening? Oh, yeah, his ADP is falling. Oh, yeah. Oh, it's dropping. Oh, yeah. So this is the issue. I've seen so many players that look a lot like Keon Coleman, relatively dominant in college, slow 40 time, opted out of the agility drills, which was not a good sign. And yeah, best case scenario, he's Allen Robinson. Best case scenario, but he's not as big as Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson was a full 220 coming out of Penn State. This kid's closer to 210 and wasn't not nearly as productive as Allen Robinson. So if we flip here, if we go to the go-to and we just flip down and go to the profile, college stats, I don't see an 800-yard season on his resume. He played 12 games, can't get to 800 yards. I know it's a very simple benchmark, but there's just not a lot of production here to get me excited. And then he had to transfer. There's a transfer in there too, right? So it's very simple, the case for Dalton Kincaid. And we talked about it on the Sonic Truth. Trey McBride goes a full round in startups ahead of Dalton Kincaid, and that doesn't make any sense to me. So this is super flex. This does reward first downs, so rushing quarterbacks are at a premium, and yet I did get Deshaun Watson in the 4th round, Trevor Lawrence in the 5th round. That was a nice gift. Mike Evans, Josh Jacobs, Alvin Kamara, David Njoku go off the board, and then there's Trevor Lawrence in a super flex league. I did go with Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors, his upside is incredible if there is a talent melding with Daniel Jones. And I think there will be. I think there's synergies there between him and Daniel Jones. Ryan Reynolds did a great job talking about that. Daniel Jones has to see throws before he makes them, and Malik Neighbors is great at creating separation. So I think that's a great skill match, and I think that's where the upside is. So you could argue, you could have gone with the Jalen Waddle. Yes, there's injury upside for Jalen Waddle, but it's not like Tua and Daniel Jones a big difference. And there is no Tyreek Hill in New York, and New York has to play Washington, has to play Dallas twice, has to play New York twice. So there's those 6 games in the division are all could need to be high scoring. And that's also the reason why I'm not as concerned as Ryan Reynolds about the Cowboys. Because, yes, the Cowboys will face stiffer defenses, more difficult defenses. There's no doubt about that. But the Cowboys played slow last year. You go to Dak Prescott's page on PlayerProfiler, and what do you see? Well, you see that the pace of play ranked number 30 in the NFL. So, yes, he was beyond efficient, as the other metrics down below will show you. And number 1 in pressured completion percentage, top 5 in deep ball completion percentage. He was number 2 in true passer rating. He's not going to be that efficient this year. That's because they went against these injury-ravaged defenses. So he did it with efficiency. Last time I checked, Dak Prescott is not like a top quarterback everyone's going after in fantasy drafts. That didn't happen. But CeeDee Lamb is. Right? CeeDee Lamb is, because CeeDee Lamb, in and of his essence, is excellent. And yes, the game situations are going to be more difficult. It's going to be more difficult for CeeDee Lamb to get separation. He's not going to be quite as productive this year as he was last year on a per route basis. He's not going to be as efficient. But could he command more total volume? So could it be that he has more targets and fewer receptions? Yes, that's very possible. That's absolutely possible. Could he have more air yards? Yes. Yes, absolutely. So there's ways that this can break right still for Dallas, that there can be this regression from the quality of the opponent just gets much worse for them, right? The opponents get better, but the teams they're playing, like, we think the Cleveland offense is going to be better this year. Certainly, the Cincinnati offense has to be better this year. Pittsburgh's offense is destined to improve now that there's no Kenny Pickett. Lamar Jackson getting this incredible rapport now with Zay Flowers, a healthy Mark Andrews. So what you lose in efficiency, you're going to make up for in needing to push the pace of play in order to keep up with all of these just better teams. Yeah, you're facing better teams. And so the per play efficiency isn't going to be as high, but the total plays run is going to go up. The pace of play goes up. You end up throwing more. You end up catching more passes. You end up putting up more fantasy points. So it can all come out in the wash. Like, oh man, it took me 3 minutes of thinking about it, where I was like, man, this is true. Dallas is in trouble. And I was like, wait a second. Who are the quarterbacks on the other side of Dallas when they face off against the AFC North? Oh, that's right. Nothing to see here. So no regrets. No regrets. Took me a minute or 3 to get comfortable that, okay, I have CeeDee Lamb in the Scott Fish Bowl. It's fine. I'm very bullish on Dak Prescott. That's fine. That all makes sense. So to continue, after I drafted Malik Neighbors, Aaron Jones, I'm in on this year. This is the year. He signed his 1-year deal. He's all they have. Ty Chandler had his shot last year. It didn't work out. They didn't replace Ty Chandler with another threat. So it's Aaron Jones, right? I give these running backs one true opportunity, right? You're healthy. You're named the starter. Do you perform or not? If you don't, if you face plant, then it's very rare that I'm going to become a truther for a player like a Ty Chandler. It has to be a player like a Roschon Johnson who has this all-purpose skill set that I truly respect, and that there also has to be a rationale for why they didn't perform the previous year. So Roschon Johnson had that devastating, that serious concussion that really cost him an opportunity to become the starter and to produce. And so there is a way to rationalize that in a way you can't really rationalize what happened to Ty Chandler last year. George Pickens in the 8th round, that's where George Pickens should be drafted. Not in the 4th round on underdog, or even the 3rd round now. Come on. I mean, I guess you could argue, okay, George Pickens, late 4th round, okay. But when you're seeing him in the late 3rd, that's where you have to say no. Got the stack with Russell Wilson, so it was a beautiful thing. In the 9th round, I was between J.J. McCarthy. I had Justin Jefferson. I also had George Pickens. So it's like McCarthy or Wilson, flip a coin. We have them similarly ranked. And Trevor Tipton ahead of me took McCarthy. And I was like, oh, thank you. Thank you for doing that. I really appreciate that. Like, that's the opposite of a snipe. When you're down to 2 guys and there's one person in front of you and they take one of your guys, that's an anti-snipe. That's you're helping me. Luke Musgrave, because he's the only one late. He's the only tight end late that checks all the boxes where, as Ryan Reynolds mentioned, it's a distributed offense in Green Bay. There's not an established alpha there, so he could rise up and really command a huge target share, and he has that Travis Kelce talent profile. And then the same thing happened in the next round where I was like, well, flip a coin. Am I going to go Corum or Trey Benson? I'd rather have Corum, but Trey Benson's also fine. And so someone took Corum, and I got Trey Benson. And then I was like, well, Xavier Worthy or Brian Thomas, for maximum rookie upside. Maybe even throw Odunze in there. Odunze goes, Xavier Worthy goes. They leave me Brian Thomas, who happens to be a stack with Trevor Lawrence. Full disclosure, I had Thomas ahead of all those guys because I wanted the stack. Matthew Friedman and I talked about this. This is a big field tournament, so you have to prioritize stacking. You have to. And then Chuba Hubbard. So we talked about this on the Sonic Truth podcast, how Chuba Hubbard's going to start. The odds are Jonathan Brooks is going to open the season on the pup, and he's going to be eased in. And Chuba Hubbard was quite productive last year. Right? He was fed. When you look at the carry leaders from the NFL last year, like, how did Chuba, what? Yeah. So Chuba Hubbard ingratiated himself to the team. Not enough for them not to draft Jonathan Brooks, but enough for them to be confident in giving him the ball early in the season. And then we will see how it goes. We will see how Jonathan Brooks progresses in his rehabilitation from this knee injury. I don't think he's ever going to be a bell cow. And it will go from Chuba being the workhorse to Chuba being the lightning to Jonathan Brooks' thunder. Either way, getting that guy, Chuba Hubbard, in the 13th round is what I'm here for. And this is the advantage. This is why when I'm choosing a position to be weak at, I'm like, okay, I can get Aaron Jones very late, considering he is a dynamic player who projects to have like a top 10 opportunity share. And he doesn't have so many carries on his odometer that you're worried about a breakdown. So knowing that guys like Aaron Jones are out there in the middle rounds, and then knowing that there's this Chuba Hubbard, and then there's this Kendre Miller, and then there's a Tajay Spears. There's just so many of these guys, especially the second-year running backs I like. And you know who I'm going to be drafting next. I'll show it. I'll show you right now who I'm drafting next. I'll put my queue up on the board. We got Larry Hill, Reed Rocker, and Kurt Bowden. I'll show these guys who I've got queued up. Of course it's Roschon Johnson. And, Jaleel McLaughlin and Chase Brown. So I'm going for another running back. Brown and McLaughlin have much earlier ADPs, and I don't care. At this point in a draft, you're not playing the ADP game. Please don't do that. That would be my advice. You get into the second half of a draft, stop factoring in ADP and trying to micromanage the ADP and thread the needle. You can do that in the second round by all means. By all means. Third round, fourth round, thread the needle. Don't reach. What are you doing? But think about the regret. If I don't take Roschon Johnson and someone jumps up a couple rounds and grabs him and I don't get him, and I'm sitting here with Chase Brown and I don't have Roschon Johnson, I would feel terrible. So I'm just not going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and draft Roschon. That's what I'm going to do. Now, that's a strategy for traditional leagues. You're drafting against your friends, your family, you're setting a starting lineup. You want a bench that is primarily running backs. In fact, I could argue that if your bench was 100% running backs, you just had your starting quarterback, starting tight end, and you filled out your receivers and flex positions with wide receivers, and then your whole bench is running backs, I would probably like your team. All else equal, I would like that. I like that team structure a lot. Because the last thing you want to do is load up with a bunch of bench receivers late and then pick the wrong one or drop the wrong one after week one. And there's a lot less opportunity for you to feel like an idiot. Now, it's completely the opposite for best ball, for underdog, right? Late in the draft. So I think to close it out, let's look at all the potential wide receiver options late. So Buffalo Bills, we'll go team by team. We'll just go down the board. Buffalo Bills, Khalil Shakir. I'm going to name one receiver or none, right? Or none, right? So I'll name either one receiver or no receivers. Okay. So Buffalo Bills, Khalil Shakir. Miami Dolphins. This is interesting. I think that Miami Dolphins rookie Malik Washington is one of the more interesting late round wide receivers in the NFL. So Malik Washington is interesting in Dynasty, but there's no one I'm interested in that wide receiver room. It's Hill and it's Waddle, and then you're just doing injury speculation, and I'm not here for that. That's not fun, right? New England Patriots. I get Jalen Polk. He's exciting. He's a rookie. But for me, it's DeMario Douglas. Pop Douglas, that it is just, it's so clear, and it will be obvious once Drake May is under center that Pop Douglas has developed this rapport and that he's the number one and that Jalen Polk is a distant second, if it's even Jalen Polk, right? Kendrick Bourne, whoever it is, okay? New York Jets. It's all about Garrett Wilson, and I'm not interested in anyone else. If anything, it would be in 2 tight end leagues, super tight end premium leagues, maybe a Tyler Conklin. But so far, AFC East, it's Shakir and it's Douglas. These are guys I want in best ball. I'm not drafting them in traditional leagues, though. If I have to start a lineup, pick a lineup, I'm not drafting these guys, okay? I'm getting premium receivers, so I don't have to worry about it. But in best ball, those are the guys. Baltimore Ravens, I'm still a Rashad Bateman truther. Rashad Bateman is a starter there. That offense is going to take a step forward, and he's been dealing with some major injuries, Achilles injuries, hip injuries, injuries you don't want, injuries that are difficult to rehab from in the middle of the season. Having a healthy offseason for Bateman is huge, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. So I like Bateman late. I'm drafting Bateman in best ball. I'm drafting Elijah Moore in best ball in the AFC North. No one on the Bengals is interesting to me because that's a dichotomy, right? There's no room. Past Chase and Higgins, not a lot of room. Well, there's room for Mike Gesicki, maybe, but the receiver room, Ilyasovis, I can't get there. Steelers, absolutely. I love speed. So I'm drafting Calvin Austin late. Backdoor stack of Russell Wilson and Calvin Austin is one of my favorites. Houston Texans, who I've talked about. John Mechie, why I like John Mechie. Indianapolis Colts, no. Why? Because Anthony Richardson is going to be one of the league bottom ranked quarterbacks in pass attempts per game. So why would I do that? If you have Anthony Richardson and have Jonathan Taylor, why are you worried about receivers not named Michael Pittman? Anybody? Anybody in the chat? Anyone have an answer to that? Anyone? No? Jacksonville Jaguars, Gabe Davis, fringe receivers, no thank you. Tennessee Titans, Will Levis, they already have Ridley and Hopkins. I like Chig, but no receivers there. Marvin Mims in Denver, absolutely. The Marvin Mims, Bo Nix backdoor stack has been discussed on shows. Kansas City, their top 3 receivers, they're all getting top 100 ADPs, so can't do that. Las Vegas, Jacoby Myers, he's interesting. But all the 12 personnel they're going to run, the arrival of Brock Bowers with bottom 5 quarterback play, that makes Jacoby Myers, this is the year that Jacoby Myers may be the closest to being properly valued we've ever seen. Los Angeles Chargers, I love Josh Palmer late, just in the law of the conservation of targets. It's got to be somebody. Dallas Cowboys, it's all about CeeDee Lamb. Brandon Cooks, he's not inexpensive enough to worry too much about, though I like him. Jalen Tolbert, it's got to be a really deep league for me to get into Jalen Tolbert. Can't get there. New York Giants, absolutely Wan'Dale Robinson. Wan'Dale Robinson, a lot more explosive than this sort of slot receiver prototype tag that he gets labeled with. Philadelphia Eagles, nothing I can see there. Washington, Jahan Dotson. I'm very into Jahan Dotson. That's a first-round pick. And so he could be this year's Nico Collins, where you take a big leap forward with a rookie quarterback and this third-year receiver that, Big Ten school, had a lot of advocates coming out. Most have forgotten about him, an afterthought receiver, comes out of nowhere. And it's like, oh, yeah, Jahan Dotson, man, he was electric at Penn State. Yeah, he was, wasn't he? Chicago Bears, Odunze, baby. The upside is incredible. Just need a couple games with no Keenan Allen, and he'll give you the spike weeks. Detroit Lions, can't do it. No Jameson Williams for me. Green Bay Packers, Bo Melton, Dontavian Wicks. So you got two there. That's a rare thing. The steam on Wicks, like I think Wicks could be a superstar. You see these news items, we're like, really? Really? Dontavian Wicks? So my worry is where I start to see multiple analysts all naming a particular player as their late round wide receiver of choice. Makes me nervous, and then that's compounded by yet more beat reports and yet more hyperbole from coaches, the quarterback, where Dontavian Wicks did not put up special numbers, did not show himself to be special at the Senior Bowl, at the Combine, in college. So I'd rather just wait until the end of a draft or pick up Bo Melton on waivers than to get behind a guy that is currently still the number 4 wide receiver on the depth chart, and then there's Luke Musgrave, and then there's Tucker Kraft. Can't get there, and then they're gonna run the offense through Josh Jacobs for games where they have a double-digit lead. I appreciate the Dontavian Wicks hype. I do. I get it. I wish that there wasn't so much hype so that I could hype him, but now that he's been hyped, it's not worth talking about. Atlanta Falcons, Darnell Mooney. Hell yeah, Darnell Mooney. Forget Darnell Mooney, 1,000-yard receiver. Spike week specialist. This is why we play best ball for guys like Darnell Mooney. Come on now. Carolina Panthers, it's all about Deontay Johnson. The skill match there with Bryce Young is too great to even consider other players. New Orleans Saints, I actually like two guys there. I like Rashid Shaheed. I also like A.T. Perry. But the offense is gonna regress, so I'm not aggressively pursuing these guys. I really like Rashid Shaheed. I do. It's small school player that was underappreciated. That narrative resonates with me, where everyone that has this contact with Rashid Shaheed is like, he's so underrated. He's so explosive. He has the Tyreek Hill vibes. And you start to hear that from all these different corners of the league. That resonates. Tampa Bay Buccaneers can't quite get there with Baker Mayfield to try to go for a Trey Palmer or some fringe receiver on the Buccaneers. I'm just focused on the value of Godwin there. Arizona Cardinals, got to get Michael Wilson late. So Michael Wilson's getting similar hype from coaches and the quarterback of a Dontavian Wicks, but it's just not landing with the fantasy community the way it is with Dontavian Wicks. So I think Michael Wilson is an absolute value. Last time I checked, there's no Marquise Brown there. So, and as a rookie on the other side, and I know it's a phenomenal rookie and he's going to be great, but there's room there. There's room there in that offense. That's going to be a prolific offense. There's room for Michael Wilson. There's no fringe receivers on the 49ers. Ricky Pearsall. Aw, Ricky Pearsall. He's on the NFI list. Aw. That's a bummer. Jeez. I hate being right that way. Not this way. Not like this. Not like this. Seattle Seahawks. I'm into Jackson Smith-Njigba, but I wouldn't consider him a late player. Los Angeles Rams. There's really no room outside Kupp and Puka Nacua. So those are my late round receivers. I think I probably gave you at least 2 per division, right? So we're talking about 10 to 20 late round receivers. So that's the beauty of best ball is you want to get your running backs locked in, get your quarterbacks locked in, get your tight ends locked in. Then you got like 8 rounds and you're just hammered down on receivers, and you're like, okay, I got a list of 16 guys, and yeah, every round I'll let someone pick the receiver I have listed. I'll let someone draft a receiver out from under me, and I'll just take the other guy, right? And so it's just a no sweat end of the draft where I can just go to the next guy. Player X is off the board. Oh, you took Calvin Austin? Great, I'll take Elijah Moore. And you just you play that game all the way down, and in 22 rounds, like, oh, you took Bo Melton? Okay, I'll take John Mechie, and just you play it all the way out. And it's a sort of a very stress-free, fun way to draft. And it's how I like to structure my best ball teams, and I laid out how I like to structure my traditional, managed leagues. And it is absolute go time in fantasy football. And let's go have fun. Hey, I want to thank you for being part of this broadcast. If you have any thoughts on it, leave a comment. If you enjoyed it, make sure you leave a like. And if you want to see more shows on the Player Profiler channel, subscribe to it. That's how we know you want more.